Good morning. Today is September 1st, 2016. We're at the Jewish Community Center in Stamford, Connecticut. And I have the pleasure of interviewing Rhea Comen on behalf of the Jewish Historical Society of Fairfield County. And we'll say good morning, Rhea. Rhea, were you born in Stamford?
No, I came from New York when I was 3.5 years old.
Yeah.
I was born in the Bronx, in Harlem actually, at a hospital called Sydenham Hospital. And I don't have that written down. And then we moved, I lived there for 1.5 years, then we moved to Brooklyn for about 2 years, and then we came to Stamford in October of 1934.
And where were your parents from?
My mother was born in Weehawken, New Jersey, and my father was born in the Bronx, New York. Yes, they're American born.
And do you know where your grandparents came from?
Yes, my father's parents came from Hungary and Romania, and my mother's parents came from Russia. We did try to find where they actually came from, but we were unable to make a connection.
When they, did your grandparents immigrate to the United States?
Yes,
Mm.
yes.
And where did they settle?
My grandmother lived in, they first lived in New Jersey, in Weehawken, and then they, when she died, she was living in Brooklyn. And my grandfather, I didn't know my father's mother. She died when she was 39, and they lived in the Bronx.
And what did they do for a living? Do you have any idea?
My grandfather, let's see, my mother's father was, had a little, what would you call it, a little newspaper stand that, in New Jersey, and he died when she was 10 years old. It burned down. I think her family had something to do with tobacco in Russia, like a tobacconist to the Tsar, but that's as far as I knew.
Yeah.
And my father's, my grandfather, I'm embarrassed to tell you, I don't really remember. I don't know.
Do you know what brought your parents to Stamford?
Yes, my father got a job with the Stamford department store. I don't know how he met Dick Cohn, who was the owner of the Stamford department store. But my father was in the linen business. He was in the retail business in New York, and then he got this job as the manager of the Stamford department store, and he was there until he retired. Yeah.
What year did he retire? Do you have any idea?
Well, let me think. He retired before I got married, so it had to be. No, he didn't. Probably around, he died in 1963, so I would say maybe around 1959, something like that.
Do you know where that store was located?
The Stamford department store was on Atlantic and Bell, the corner of Atlantic and Bell. It eventually became Saunders department store, and my father was still there in Saunders, but at that point he had the linen department. He did the linen department. And I used to go there as a little girl to go visit. You could walk from where we lived. We lived on South Street. That was the first place we lived.
Where on South Street?
We lived in the Ambassador Arms on South Street, which was about maybe a mile away from the Armory. And if you remember the 1938 hurricane, my mother took me down to the Armory so we could help the people who were brought back from the South End, because they were all flooded out.
Yeah, that was before the hurricane barrier was built.
Exactly.
And I remember there were people going around in rowboats down there.
Oh, yes, yes.
Yeah.
And then again in '55, if you remember, we had
Yes.
and that's when I had to move, because they were also going around in the boats where I lived on Forest Lawn Avenue. And that's where we had to move from our place. But,
That's all from the Rippon River. Yeah.
when I moved on my street, I didn't even know there was a trickle of water there, no less a river. But when we lived in the Ambassador Arms, you might be interested, there was a rug place called Sarajian's.
Yes, I do.
Well-known rug place. There was a food fair. And then down near the railroad station was Rice School, which is where I started school. Alex Staley and I both did.
Do you remember at Rice School, there were two entrances, one's for the girls and one for the boys?
Absolutely, and you couldn't put your hands on the railing when you walked up the stairs to marching music.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Mr. Roby was the principal. Yes. And I was there through 4th grade. I remember a couple of the teachers, Mrs. Graney, Miss Wecky, Miss Matudis. Those were my young teachers.
Just going back a moment, do you remember any other Jewish families that were living in Ambassador Arms?
Well, let's see now. No, I don't. I do know that Dr. Tenon had his practice there. Muriel Siskin's father,
Mm-hmm.
he had his practice there, but I don't remember any other Jewish
I think I
families
remember,
at that time.
I think Julian and Sylvia Frankel lived there.
Of course, I apologize, of course, I just saw her recently, believe it or not. I think she's still with us. Yes, Barbara Novak, her, I can't think what her maiden name was. Bernstein, she lived there for a while. She was the cutest, curly-haired little child. We had a wonderful backyard. It was a playground for any child. It was a huge backyard. Yeah.
It was interesting right now there were big office towers where the Ambassador Arm was.
Sure.
And where Sarajuddin he would not sell them the property. So
That I never knew.
They built around,
Yeah,
so that's why these office buildings are in a U shape.
that's
And
interesting.
then after he passed away, then they were able to buy that property.
Yeah. And the Slavin's pharmacy was on the corner of South Street. Where
And Bell, I think.
No, it wasn't Bell, it was further up. It's further up. It was not Bell Street, but I don't remember the name of the street.
Hmm.
So he was there for many, many years till they moved down to where the government center was.
When you were living on, you mentioned on Forest Lawn, was that before you were married?
No, that was when we were
Okay.
first married in 63.
So you went to Rice School for how many grades?
Kindergarten through 4th grade.
And then
Then I
after
went to
that?
Belltown. We moved to Belltown, to Alton Road, which was Upland and Belltown and Alton Road.
Mm-hmm.
Risey Bloomfield lived there.
Yeah,
The Cones lived there. Charlie Cone lived there.
yeah.
The Urbans lived there. I don't remember. The people who owned La Surette lived around the corner.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember their last name right now. I can see them walking
No, I
together.
could too.
Yes. So we lived there. I went to Belltown School for 2 years, 5th and 6th grade.
Mm-hmm.
And I was there when they put in the first library for that school. That was a fun time in 6th grade. And then I went to Burdick. But before that, you might be interested to know, I went to JCC camp in the summertime.
Mm-hmm.
And I seem to remember that it was $35 for the whole season. And that was a most wonderful experience, going to
Yeah.
that camp. The property went from where the center is now, all the way down to Bedford Street.
Yes.
Remember that?
Yeah, the camp was behind the old Jewish Center,
Yes.
Camp JC.
All the way down to Bedford Street where the police department is. And Mr. Valensky, do you remember Mr. Valensky?
Yeah, he was the custodian.
He was the custodian, and we always used to tease. Mr. Valensky would come up and say, "The water is dripping on my head," because there was a little hole in the floor in the kitchen. And whenever our Hadassah women got together and were working in the kitchen, those of us who knew him always talked about that.
Now, the Walensky that became mayor, Julius.
Yes, that probably was a relationship,
I
I'm
think so,
sure.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Did you go to Hebrew school when?
I didn't go to Hebrew school. My brother went. And the day that I remember, my mother had to take him every day. There was a period of time we went to Hebrew school every day.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't have a car, so she had to take him by bus. So she said when it came time for me, she had it. So she just took me to dancing school at the Jewish Center. Yeah.
So, you talked about your brother. Was he younger or older?
No, my brother was 3.5 years older than me, Stanley Golden. He passed away in 1997. 1971. I don't know why I said what I did. 1971. And he wrote a letter. I sent it to my niece. When the Jewish Center opened, he wrote a letter, like at the dedication. If I can get it, I'll see if I can, but she has it out in California.
Yeah, that would be nice to put in our archives.
Yeah.
And we have a copy.
I'll see if she'll send it to me, if she still has it.
Was he bar mitzvah, your brother?
He was bar mitzvah at Temple Bethel,
Uh,
and we had a long table, and in those days you said, your congratulations was for all the fountain pens. Today I am a fountain pen. Yes, he, let's see, so he was born in 28, so when he was 13, it was like 30, was when I was, no, 28, I was a little girl when he was born, he was 13, I was 11.
Yeah, I remember your brother.
Yeah.
Looking back in your experiences as a child in Rice School or whatever, did you find you experienced any anti-Semitism?
I think I was very fortunate. The only time that I can remember is that we were doing something with the Christmas seals. And someone made a comment about it, but I was never frightened by it. I was never overwhelmed by people treating me differently. I had many Christian friends.
Yeah.
And I would say that I was very fortunate in my experiences as far as that was concerned. I think I told you I belonged to Temple Bethel, but most of my friends were from the synagogue.
You go to Sharlach.
Yes. Although I did have friends from the Nathansons, the Alberts, the Millers, Grace Miller, if you remember.
Yes.
Yes. I was friends with those girls.
Did you belong to any other Jewish organizations?
I belonged to B'nai B'rith. I belonged to Hadassah. I was quite involved with Hadassah when I got married. As a youngster, it basically was the B'nai B'rith girls. I don't think I belonged to Young Judea. No, I didn't.
When you graduated from high school, Stanford High,
Yes,
that was the only high school in Stanford.
exactly.
What year did you graduate?
1949.
And did you go on to any further?
Yes, I went to Forsyth Dental Hygiene School in Boston, Massachusetts. That was a 2-year program. And then I came back and I worked in New York. And then I worked in Darien.
When you worked in New York, were you commuting every
I
day?
commuted every day. Yeah. With Elaine Silver. Remember Elaine Nessum? Elaine Silver Nessum?
Yeah.
We called her.
You know her.
Commuted her with her. Do you know her?
No, but I'm just recognizing.
Yeah, when, from the, she works here for the Historical Society now, I know. And there were Charlotte Glenner, who's Charlotte Goldblatt now.
Yeah.
And my memory is not very good, so I don't remember.
No, I think it's terrific.
Yeah.
Where did you meet your husband?
I met him at a snowball dance at the Jewish Center that B'nai B'rith had sponsored at Christmas time. And we knew each other. We went on 7 dates. And he went back, he was in the Navy. He went back to the Navy in Florida. And when he came back in June, we got engaged. And we've been married for 62 years.
And when he got, Alan Comen,
Yes.
got out of the Navy, what kind of a job did he have?
His parents owned an auto supply store in Darien. They had for 43 years. But his father unfortunately passed away just before we got married. And Alan was able to be discharged from the Navy. And he ran the store for he and his mother and my sister-in-law.
What was the name of the business?
Jules Auto Supply.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it started out as an auto supply store and then became a very well-known bicycle store. They were very well known in the area. And by the way, his sister Carol was married to Fred Sherbico. If you remember the Sherbys.
Yes.
Yes, well, she was married to Fred. She unfortunately passed away a few years ago.
And is Fred still around?
Fred still lives in Florida, and he was living in Hartford, but that he's planning on selling that home. And he has a place down in Florida.
And when you were first married, where did you live?
When we first married, we bought this home on Forest Lawn Avenue, little house, little tiny house. And the day of the flood, he had come home with a book. He was going to do the family. He was going to make a playroom for us because we had this big cellar, and the water came up to the top of the cellar. It was an 11-foot cellar, and the water came to the top. So we lived there. We had we got married in February, and the following March we had our first child.
In February what year?
February of '53.
Mm-hmm.
And she was born in '54, and we lived there until my second child was born. For a very short time, we lived there. That was in '56, and excuse me. And then we moved to Woodside Village, and we lived in Woodside Village till '63, when my third child was born, my third daughter.
Mm.
And then we moved up to Idlewood Place, and we've been there for 52 years.
When you said you had a small home on Forest Lawn,
Very small.
do you remember how much you paid for it?
I thought it was 11. Alan said it was 15,000. Yes. And we loved it. We thought we were going to stay there for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
We were going to fix the upstairs and everything,
Yeah.
but it wasn't. But we've been very fortunate. We live in a marvelous area.
And you continued to work as a dental hygienist while he had the store?
Oh, yes. I worked as a dental hygienist until I retired. Well, I worked in the private office, and then I worked for the city of Stamford for 18 years, and I retired in 1995. What we did is we had a very large dental hygiene program in the Stamford school system. We took care of the public schools, the private schools, daycare centers, nurseries, schools. And we started out with 9, and now they're down to 4. But their program has had to change, of course, because of it. But
And
it's terrific.
were you working when your children were small?
For a while, when I worked, when I left work when Julie was born, and then Wendy was born in '63. In 63. I stayed home with her for a couple of years, and then I started work for Herb Queskin. And I worked for him for a number of years,
Mhm.
part-time. And that was a great job. That was a fun job.
So in your adult life, were you active in temple or
Yeah,
synagogue?
I was very active with Hadassah. I was a president, I was Woman of the Year, I was I worked with some other people. That was my biggest, I guess, Jewish activity.
Mhm.
I belonged to the synagogue women's group. We did belong to the synagogue for over 40 years. My children were bat mitzvah there, and all three of them went to Hebrew school at the original Hebrew school. They were bat mitzvah there. And then I had a bat mitzvah. I brought the paper. I won't move.
No, we'll look
I
at
have the
it.
paper over there. I brought it over because I have the names of the women, and you might be interested. 5 of us had the.
We will look at those
Yeah, you can
papers
look at those.
the end.
And as I say, I belonged to the synagogue when it was down on Grove Street,
Mhm.
and then because we moved back up to Colonial Hill Road. I did a lot of volunteering. I was a volunteer in the school system.
What position did you do?
I was a tutor before the tutoring from the Jewish community started, from UJF. I was a tutor even before that. I worked in the libraries. I was a librarian in the schools. I was a volunteer
Mhm.
at the Springdale Library before it was redone, before it became Hollander. I was for 20 years. I was a volunteer at the Jewish Home in Fairfield.
Mhm.
I like to volunteer.
Were you ever active in any politics in the community?
No, one year when Sandy Goldstein was running, I helped out, but I'm not into politics
Mhm.
enough to volunteer for that.
Do you remember anything about growing up during the Depression?
No, I have to be honest, we were pretty fortunate.
Mhm.
My father had a good job, and we were aware of it.
Yeah.
I was too young actually in the beginning, but we were aware that people
But
were
it didn't
careful.
affect your family?
Personally,
No.
didn't affect us personally,
How
no.
about in World War II? Do you remember any of the
I
challenges?
remember being in my bedroom on December 7th when they made the announcement. I was 10 years old.
Mhm.
There again, we did not have any, I would say, we did not suffer from anything, other than you were careful. We had the stamps that you used for buying foods. In school, we saved our money at the war stamps that everybody bought and put into a book. Again, I was old enough to be aware of what was happening. I was very much affected to this day about the Holocaust. It did have an effect on me in terms of my thinking for many years, the way I felt about certain groups and people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You had 3 children,
I have 3 daughters
3 daughters.
Yes.
And
and 6 grandchildren, 3 boys and 3 girls,
mhm.
and 1 great-grandson.
And where do they live?
My oldest daughter lives in Stamford, a
Mhm.
few blocks from me. My middle daughter lives in Pittsfield, Massachusetts. And my youngest daughter lives in Westfield, Massachusetts, which is right outside of Springfield. They're all working women. My oldest daughter is a speech pathologist. My middle daughter is president of a gas company in Pittsfield. And my youngest daughter is a computer person. She works for, interestingly enough, the PJ Library, for Mr. Greenspoon, if you've heard of the PJ Library, which is a huge corporation now that sends free books to any Jewish child in the world, in the country, and he's expanded out into foreign countries. A free book every month. From the up until now, it was from the ages of, I think, 3 to 6, and now it's they've increased, or to 8, and now it's from 8 to 11. And so all my girls have very good positions, and they're we've been very fortunate. Okay, this is from this Burdick Times, which was the junior high school, that we called it then, in Stamford. It was in 1940. My brother, Stanley Golden, was on the editorial staff. But what was interesting, as I went through the names, there were many Jewish names on the list. Harold Godlin, Barbara Weissman, Ethel Epstein, Robert Weiss. They're names that people might remember and just find very interesting. Again, the Burdick Times. This was already in 1946. At that time, I was the editor-in-chief, but then we had Toby Fogel, Robert Howard, Marlene Epstein. Let's see. And again, we had a lot of Jewish names on the editorial list, so you know where our Jewish students were interested in doing a lot of. It was a dancing school that was run by Ruth Wofsy at the Jewish Center. I would think of about 1941. Again, we have Mildred Goldblum, Rhea Comen, Elaine Rovin, who was now our dear Elaine Sharlach, Selma Sigler. Again, we have quite a number of people that are still in Stamford, and we grew up with and had good times. In the year 1992-93, I was elected by unanimous vote for the Woman of the Year for the Chai group of Hadassah. And I spent many, many, many years with Hadassah. And again, there were names, I don't think we have the names down, but there again, Hadassah was very important to me.
All right, we're going to finish the
Okay.
program.
What would I tell my children, my grandchildren? First of all, I would wish them and their children the happy life that I had as a young person. I would wish them good health, happiness, fulfillment, that they should be loving, sensitive, and appreciative of all that their life gives them, and they should live in peace.
You wanted to add about who married you and your bas mitzvah.
Okay, Rabbi Perlman from Temple Bethel married us in his office
What year?
in 1953. Is that right? 1950? Yeah, right. And then we went to Chimney Corners for a very small luncheon of 10 people. And my father-in-law had already passed away. And We've been together, it'll be 63 years in February.
And your bar mitzvah?
And my bas mitzvah was in 1998.
86 or 87?
1986. I had a most wonderful experience. Rabbi Adler taught us. Rabbi Perlman, excuse me. Rabbi Aaron Kranz was our chief rabbi then. And it was a very wonderful experience for me. I always wanted to have a little more knowledge than I did because I hadn't gone to Hebrew school. I was a little jealous of some of the other kids who had Hebrew school, a confirmation or something like that. And I did it with most extraordinary women. Maxine Goldblum, Maddie Field, Helen Seifert, Ann Peskin, and myself. And it's an experience that I will always appreciate and value and be happy with.
Well, thank you very much,
Thank
Rhea.
you.
It's been a very interesting interview, and I wish you many good years of health and happiness.
Thank you, Lester. Thank you all. I was asked to do this a long time ago, and I just didn't. I was nervous about it and scared, and it was good.
And it was nothing, right?
It was so interesting. You hear all,
Yeah.
the memory of all these people.
Yeah.
It's like a
Yes.
whole world.
Yeah. Trouble is my memory is not good, and so there was
Your
so many
memory is
things-
better than mine.
so